morning. Okay. Have you ever read one of those books that goes back and forth between past and present? Chapter 1 is the present, and then all of a sudden switches back to chapter 2 in the past, goes back to the past in chapter 2. In the beginning of the story, you might be thinking, I don't know about this book. This is hard to follow, and I'm not sure what the author is doing here. Often, early on in the story, it's difficult to see the connection between chapters, and you may wonder how the story will be woven together. This is going to be a little bit like that, so hang in there with me. Chapter 1. A few months after Anderson Cooper's mom died, he sat down and did an interview with Stephen Colbert. Anderson said to him, "You told an interviewer that you learned to love the thing you most wish had not happened. Is that right?" What you need to know is that Stephen grew up in a large Catholic family and was the youngest of 11 children. When he was 10, his dad and 2 brothers were killed in a plane crash. So the question was, you learned to love the thing you most wish had not happened. Is that right? Stephen pauses and says, yes, it's a gift to exist. With existence comes suffering. There is no escaping that. If you are grateful for your life, then you're grateful for all of it. What Stephen is talking about here, this type of gratitude and thankfulness, is not circumstantial. It's not about what's going on around you. It's a decision, a choice, a mindset, and a discipline to practice gratitude for everything. Chapter 2. You've heard the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. In one of T.D. Jakes' sermons, he told the story in a way I'd never heard before. He says, in this crowd of 5,000 hungry people, the disciples tell Jesus there is a child with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But what good is that with all of these people, the disciples ask. Jesus takes the bread and fish, looks up to heaven, and gives thanks. Jesus is blessing something which is not enough. T.D. Jakes continues, until you can be thankful for something which is not enough, then what you have cannot be multiplied into what is more than enough. After giving thanks, Jesus broke the loaves. In the words of T.D. Jakes, the breaking is when the miracle occurs. This is when we lose count. He says, you understand then that the blessing is in the breaking. It is the breaking of life that produces the blessing of life. That which refuses to be broken refuses to be blessed. Chapter 3. Back to Stephen Colbert. Whatever the event in your life is that you most wish had not happened can be multiplied into blessings. Stephen describes the blessings that came from his loss. I like to think of them as ripples. Loss gives you an awareness of other people's loss, which allows you the ability to connect with another person, which allows you to love more deeply and understand more what it's like to be a human being, which allows you to not only accept that all of us suffer, but makes you grateful for the fact that you have suffered so you can connect with someone else. Chapter 4. Jesus, too, experiences suffering. During the Last Supper, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, take this and eat, this is my body. Jesus knows what breaking feels like too. After this meal to his disciples, he says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. 3 times he prays, my Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done. And as we know, he was hung on a cross and his body was broken. And that brokenness had to happen for the miracles of resurrection and salvation to exist. Chapter 5. The thing I most wish had not happened. Connor's diagnosis. Some of you have been with us from the beginning, but for those of you who haven't, the short version is he was diagnosed with Williams syndrome at 2.5 months, autism at 3.5, and intellectual disability at 6. Raising him has been the most difficult, most rewarding, and most humbling experience of my life. Here he is at 20, and we are at the edge of a cliff where there is a big change ahead of us. School is ending, and the systems in place for individuals like Connor are unraveling. We have no idea what his life or our lives will look like without school. The adult programs are full, the waiting lists are long, the staff are not there, and Medicaid, which he depends on for all adult day programming services and healthcare, is crumbling. The structures that have been in place have lost funding and are unstable. When it comes to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, Adam has said he feels like Connor has been put in the category of waste. This results in feelings of righteous indignation from the injustices facing the most vulnerable in our society. I am reminded of Jesus' words, "Whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me." This very broken system is most definitely not enough. So the challenge to myself in this moment is, can I give thanks, give this massive problem to God, and trust that all of this brokenness can be multiplied into blessings, which will be more than enough. Chapter 6. Think about the event you most wish had not happened. Reflect on your mindset and thinking. How you think about it matters. Here's a little science lesson for you. God designed our brains to be neuroplastic, which means the brain has the ability to rewire itself. The way you think can physically change the brain's structure and functioning by creating or strengthening neural pathways. Repeated thoughts, behaviors, and experiences form these pathways, making some thoughts more automatic. By intentionally focusing on and practicing new thoughts, you can build new pathways, weaken old ones, and ultimately change how you think and feel, even in adulthood. Author Marianne Williamson wrote a book called Return to Love, A Course in Miracles. She talks about those things which make us unhappy. And she says, if I am unhappy, then there is something I am not seeing clearly. Her prayer is, God, I am willing to see this differently. In those moments when there are gray clouds above me, can I change my thinking, remember and remind myself that even when what I'm seeing in my limited perspective is gray, that the truth is the sky is actually blue. Pastor Rick Warren, author of The Purpose-Driven Life, lost his son Matthew to suicide when he was 27. Matthew had struggled with severe depression and mental illness his entire life, starting in childhood. Rick described him as someone who loved the Lord, who had a tender heart, and a tortured mind. Rick says, I think our greatest witness to the world is how we handle pain. He says, there's a guy on my street I've been witnessing to for 20 years, and he was not interested in what I was saying. He was shut down, he was closed off. But when Matthew died, I remember driving by one day, and he was outside watering his lawn. He sees me, he touches his hands to his lips, his hands to his heart, and his hands out towards me. Rick says, this got to him. All of a sudden, everything I had been talking to him about got real, and he was watching how I was handling the worst circumstances of my life. Rick says, "Your greatest ministry will come out of your deepest pain." Kay and I did not ask for this ministry, ministering to families with mental illness and ministering to families with suicide. I didn't want that ministry, but God gave it to me, and I'm not going to waste the pain. Whatever your pain is, use it to help others. Chapter 7. We're all in different chapters in our lives. You may be in a chapter of joy, contentment, rejoicing, and peace. You might also be in a chapter of hardship, suffering, sorrow, or anxiety. For those of you who are in a difficult season in your story, events in your life might not make sense now, and you might not be able to clearly see how this hardship could ever lead to a blessing. It's so counterintuitive. However, something you may have noticed about the Bible is God's use of paradoxes, which are also counterintuitive. When I am weak, then I am strong. Jesus became poor so that we, through his poverty, might become rich. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. We are free when we become slaves to Christ. God's power is made perfect in weakness. The paradox in my story is that my greatest human teacher and the person who I've learned the most from has a 44 IQ. The lessons I've learned from Connor and the impact he's had on my life are not something I could have understood in one of the earlier chapters. The early years with him were horrible. Most days, we were white-knuckling it to get by. You may be in an early chapter of the event you most wish had not happened, where those gray clouds are all-consuming and you can't remember the last time you saw the blue sky. And if you are, please don't hear this message as diminishing, minimizing, or dismissing of your feelings. You can't rush through those chapters. Those feelings are necessary. Remember the ripples with Stephen Colbert. He expressed gratitude for all of those feelings he experienced in suffering because they changed his ability to connect with others. No matter what chapter you're in, our challenge is to remain faithful despite the circumstances. James 1 tells us, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." What does the development of perseverance look like? 1, trusting God's will and plan when we can't make sense of it. God, I'm willing to see this differently. 2, practicing gratitude even when our perception is it's not enough. Jesus blessing 5 loaves. And 3, looking for the ripples of blessings, even miracles, or perhaps ministries that come from the events we maybe wish hadn't happened. Allow and trust the author to take you through each chapter of the story, especially the hard parts. Hold on to the truth. Do not be anxious about anything, but through prayer and petition, make your requests known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Like Jesus modeled for us shortly before his crucifixion, this peace allows us to include in our prayers, "May your will be done." We may not fully understand the ways he will use our stories, and we may not always like the story he is writing. And while we have amazing neuroplastic brains, they are also finite and cannot comprehend the infinite nature of God's wisdom and plan. His ways are not our ways. So if you don't like your story, or you want to move on to a new chapter, here are a few ideas for you to consider. 1. Ask God to help you see it differently. 2. Remind yourself of the truth of Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. 3. Root and ground your gratitude in God's sovereignty and holiness, not in our current circumstances. Our job is not to write the book. Our job is to love God, love others, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with God, allowing him to fulfill his purpose in each of us as he weaves the chapters together according to his will. For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.